I was a cop for 20 years, and I honestly, other than going in there, and like hanging out and watching every once in a while, I still kind of always wondered what life was like, right?
And so I started seeing like the questions. They were like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know this was a job, or how do you get this job, or what do you do?
Your worst day is kind of your everyday. You know what I mean? Like the normal person, when I say the normal person out there that would call the police, that's like their worst day ever, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's your everyday. That's your everyday, except maybe your days off.
And it's like, wow, like I'm really helping. There was this lady, she called me, she was like, hello. And I was like, yeah, this is the police. How can I help you? I'm scared. I'm in the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, like what's going on?
That position that a lot of people one of the worst things I think in anything you do is not feeling appreciated. And you said that we don't do it for the appreciation. And you're right, we don't. But it sure makes it easier when you feel a little appreciated, right? We literally think we're doing the right thing 90% of the time. Not that we don't make mistakes, but we literally think we're doing the right thing. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Rewired Experience. I'm super excited today. I've got a special guest, Gabby, best known as 911. It's Gabby on Instagram. And I just want to say I stumbled across your Instagram page probably because of algorithms, right? Like, I'm sure we follow the same people and the same stuff.
We're the same.
Coming from that circle and that background. And it was crazy because I looked back to see like how much stuff you'd been posting, and you really, it doesn't look like you've done. I mean, you had like 80 posts or something, 80 something posts at the time that I found you. And I was like, man, this girl's killing it. I was like, what is she doing? And I picked up on your, just one of the videos of you, dispatching calls and things like that. And I was like, man, what a great idea. I was a cop for 20 years, and I honestly, I mean, other than going in there, and like hanging out and watching every once in a while, I still kind of always wondered what life was like, right? Like in the dispatcher world, like what is going on? What are they saying about me? If I messed up on the radio, or am I making too many traffic stops or things like that? Please. But it's funny because the perception is great. And, I had friends that as we were young law enforcement officers, they married some dispatchers, right? We always got better insight when they were dating and we'd go hang out together and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh man, I never knew you guys thought of us that way, right? Like, it's just like, so anyway, all that to say that I just loved the behind the scenes look of what's going on behind the radio as a first responder. And so I think it speaks to your growth, right? That there's probably a lot of people like me that feel that way, right? And so So what sparked the idea? What made you want? I'm gonna put some of this stuff on Instagram. What got you to think to do that?
So it started as an accident. So I had just started police dispatching because I was a dispatcher, but for the city, like concrete dispatching. And then I moved over to police dispatching, and I was just bored. Like the nighttime shift is kind of like slower. And so, but when it really gets down, it gets down. But when it was like a little bit slower. I was bored. I loved TikTok. I always loved social media. And so I just made a little TikTok, like, I was just like, come to work with me. But it's not like the 12-hour shift videos. It was just come to work with me. And I was just recording my headphones, recording my keyboard, recording the printer. Like I was just like 0.5 seconds of like little footage of items in dispatch. I wasn't actually showing like my dispatching. And my old videos, it was just like me like lip syncing or whatever, but they would get like only like 100 views. And this like dispatching video got 7,000. And so I was like, wow, like people really like this. And so I started seeing like the questions. They were like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know this was a job, or how do you get this job, or what do you do? And like people were like interested. And so I got scared because I was like, I just started this job. Well, it was like I had just gotten out of training. So I was like, I need to ask, like, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get fired. You know, like I know that this is sensitive information and stuff. Not that I put any sensitive information out. It was just, but I was just like, I know what my job like entails. And so I went immediately to my HR lady. And I said, hey, like I posted this video. It got like attention. Can I post more? What am I not allowed to do? Can I just not do it at all? And she said, no, like that's great. Just don't post any names, date of birth, license plates, social, like the obvious, like do not give anybody's information and just cover up all the screens. And I said, okay, that's fine. So yeah, that's how it started. And then it just kind of like snowballed into what it is.
Very cool. So what is your background? Like, what did you do? So you were in concrete, you were dispatching for the city work side, right? And,
Yes.
But how did you get into that?
Oh gosh. Okay. So before that, it was just the typical jobs. I was at Starbucks. I was working custodial. I was working as a server. Those are my 3 jobs, like my job experience before becoming like a city dispatcher. And I got that job through a friend. So, well, I had just moved to the city that I'm currently in from college because I wanted to be more independent. And so I was only planning on being here for 6 months. I got that dispatch job thanks to a family member. They like recommended it to me. They got me in, which was really great. I'm very grateful for it. And I learned a lot. But the way that I moved into police dispatching is because I was very unhappy with that job. And so I would say like the difference with that, it was just selling a lot of concrete. It was just selling a lot of selling concrete. And like you obviously like have to prioritize like the city and like the sidewalks and everything like that, which is fine. But the people over us, obviously they want to make their sales. They want to sell as much concrete as they can. And so when my friend, like she knew that I was unhappy with that job, but I'm very grateful for it because it gave me like dispatch experience. It gave me my independence. But she just told me like, hey, like come into police dispatching, you'll love it. And I was like, heck no, if I don't like concrete dispatching, I'm definitely not going to be in charge of people's lives. Like I'm not going to be happy doing that. She's like, just try it. And I was like, well, if I'm unhappy here, then I might as well like try something new if I'm going to be unhappy either way. And so I went into police dispatching and I love it. I love it. So yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So just to clarify, you were working like for a private company before doing dispatching work, not necessarily the city. Okay, cool. So at first I was thinking you were like transferred over from like a public works dispatching or something like
no.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So you come over to the law. Now, do you dispatch? You don't have to give us specifics, but does your agency dispatch like fire also, EMS? Or is it primarily just law enforcement?
Yeah, just law enforcement.
Okay. So you tell us a little bit about that. So you come over to law enforcement dispatching. Tell us about the culture shock. Like I know, I was a training officer for, many, many years. I worked as an academy instructor. So I understand the deer in the headlights, right? Of some of the things that can happen on a regular shift. I'll tell you what, can you share? Everybody has that moment. Like I remember my first call when I went, man, people are weird. Like this is going to be intense, right? Like this can be crazy. And the reality is this, like people don't think of it this way. Your worst day is kind of your everyday. You know what I mean? Like the normal person, when I say the normal person out there that would call the police, that's like their worst day ever. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's your everyday. That's your everyday, except maybe your days off. Right. Like,
yeah, that's only break.
Exactly. So what was the first call? And you don't have to necessarily just give us generalities, obviously protect people's privacy, but was there that call when you went, wow, this is wild? And then was your response, I'm not sure if I can do this, or was your response, I freaking love this?
Oh gosh, in the beginning, it definitely was like, oh gosh, no. But I think like later, when I knew what I was doing, I was like, it was just like an adrenaline. Like, I'm like, yes, like I'm like calling this person, I'm doing this, I'm updating the cat, I'm going on the right. Like, it's just like cool. And it's like, wow, like I'm really helping. But I would say like my first weird call, oh, I don't know. Actually, I mean, and I'll breeze it real quick, but it started off as a traffic stop. Or no, we won't tell that one. Tell another one. There's just like so many, but I think it was one of my sergeants. He was out and he saw that there was, I think we got a call and there was like a little altercation between like two female parties. And so my sergeant just went and checked it out. And it was so weird. It was so weird. And I was like, what do we even do for this? But basically, it was the aunt and the niece, and they were fighting with each other while they were driving. They were like getting physical with each other. They stop in the middle of the road, get out, start fighting each other in person and yelling. But she's like underage, but it's like you're fighting each other, but your family. So I'm like, what do we do here? Like she's underage, so she can't leave, right? Right. And then, but I'm like, but she's being harmful to the niece and like, it was all this drama. So I'm like, what are we doing here? So we're just like, that was like a weird call. Cause I'm like, I don't know like exactly what, like, and gratefully I don't have to make the decisions regarding that. But it's just like, those were like weird calls where I'm like, oh, I'm glad I don't have to like, it's not my call or whatever. But just like that stuff. I'm like, I can't deal with this every day. But you know, now it's like a normality, but things like that. And then there's like those funny calls. So.
Yeah. What's a funny one that you remember?
Oh gosh, it just happened today. Well, I guess it wasn't really like a funny call, but yeah, it was just kind of like weird. There was this lady, she called me, she was like, hello. And I was like, yeah, this is the police. How can I help you? I'm scared. I'm in the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, like what's going on? And she was like, there's somebody outside yelling. There's somebody yelling like nonsense. They're being, what did she say? They're being aggressive and inappropriate. And I said, oh, wow. Like, what are they doing? They're just yelling. And I'm like, she's like, please, I'm scared in the bathroom. And I was like, okay, do you have a description? Like, can you give me a description? Where's the party? What did they do that was inappropriate or disturbing? I don't know. I can't see them. I don't know. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, this is weird. So I was like, okay, can I get your name and callback number? Don't act like you know me. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm not acting like I know you. I just need your name and your phone number so I could call you back, give you an update, or if we need more information. No, I don't need to give you that. I don't need it. I'm like, okay, we'll go check the area. And then we go, and then officers were like, hey, we're in the area. There's nothing going on. Like, there's nothing you could show us clear. We'll check the area. So I was like, okay. And I can't even call her back because I'm like, she doesn't want to be contacted. So I'm like, what is going on? So it's just like weird things like that. Or like, there's a guy who like told us if we can like pick up the phone from the middle of the street, or like, oh, we saw a coyote go into the wood. Like things like that. I'm like, what is going on? So just like weird stuff.
Yeah. The reality of kind of the mental health crisis, right? Like people hear a lot about that. You hear it said in the news or whatever, but in law enforcement, like when I hear you talk about stories like that, the first thing I think about is our city had, we had our frequent flyers. There were people that they either struggled with drug addiction, homelessness, mental health, and I know that in my district, I had a handful that I bet they called every day. I mean, and what I know is that really good dispatchers learn how to handle those calls without sending an officer, right? And that really helps this scale. It's like I knew when I came on shift, when I heard the voice, right, who was on the radio, I was like, oh, it's gonna be a good shift, man, because my girl can take care of stuff without even calling me out, right? And so. You got officers probably already thinking like that, but that was definitely for me a sigh of relief. I'd come on and first call would go out, I'd hear who the dispatcher was working my channel, and I'd be like, okay, cool, it's going to be a good shift, because I knew which ones were really good at handling that stuff. So have you developed those skills? Are you that dispatcher where you can kind of handle stuff like that without having to send the officer to take care of it? Have you kind of gotten to that point to where you're pretty skilled at it? You seem like a good communicator, and I think that's
thank
the key,
you.
right?
I hope so. I definitely, I don't, yeah, I mean, I hope so, but I don't think I'm like there yet, but I think I'm like a huge empath. I definitely wouldn't send an officer like if it's, I'm not gonna say obvious, but because I think you have to like detect those things. But I think it's just all about asking the right questions, because there's some
100%.
dispatchers where they get they get a call, they get a location, and they send them immediately, but they don't ask details that will give you that context clue of, I don't know. So I think I'm very good at like asking questions and being like detailed and kind of, I guess, like soothing over or de-escalating a situation. But I mean, there's also that side of like, what if that's behind me? So you just got to follow your gut and like, oh, will you get in trouble because, I don't know, like, what if they said like, there's somebody behind me, and you can think like, oh, they're schizophrenic, they're paranoid, but like, what if there actually is somebody like behind you type of thing? So I guess you just got to decipher. But I will say I'm good at like asking questions and getting the details. So
that's good. Because if you can get to the bottom of it, like that's a skill, right? Like it doesn't matter. I'll tell you this, working with entrepreneurs, one of the most successful people that I've worked with as a business partner was a former dispatcher. She was a great communicator, and she translated kind of her communication skills into sales and marketing. Kind of what you've done. I mean, you've hit a niche, right? With social media, you've identified there's certain eyes that are on this. You've learned what's appealing, what's not. That's business. Like, whether people look at it that way or not, you've built a little business. And, it is kind of funny whenever I saw your just kind of little background for everybody watching or listening. Gabby posted just something on her story, and she's like, hey, I hit 100,000 followers. How should I celebrate? And I just commented, I was like, you should come on my podcast. So, I mean, but you've obviously attracted a niche market. You're doing a great job of kind of communicating a message, sharing your life, things like that. And it's really cool. So anyway, just to say, like, the sky's the limit, sister. It may not just be dispatch. So on that topic, what do you kind of have plans? Do you have some aspirations to maybe grow your brand a little bit? Or is it dispatching forever? Is it, you know what I mean? Like kind of tell us a little bit.
I think right now, so like my goal was just to build a community, and I think more heavily on dispatchers. I think like, obviously I think all first responders, I feel like a lot of first responders, especially the police, they get a lot of backlash. And I think like they're looked upon very negatively due to like, the news and media and like people's experiences and what they share. But I think a lot of it is hidden from what they have experienced. Like you don't know if like that officer that's like dealing with this certain call or whatever with the car crash, you don't know if he just came from like a domestic violence, from a suicide, like you don't know what they just came back to, or you don't know if the dispatcher just came back from like hearing somebody yelling and screaming and then hanging up the phone, or like crying over like the child that got hurt or things like that. You just never know. And you have to like answer this next call about, oh, my kitten is stuck on the tree, so it's just like, there's so many emotions that you kind of like go through in a matter of like seconds or like minutes or whatever. And so I think I just wanted to like, my first goal was just like to raise awareness towards what we actually do and like the reality of it. And we're not bad people. Like we may not react like as great as people like expect or want, but I think there's just like a bigger picture to it where we are like, constantly going through all these emotions, and we never get like thanked, and we never get and we don't do it for the appreciation. But I think more heavily on the dispatchers, like you see on the news, like, oh, thank this officer for helping little Timmy or whatever. But it's like, the dispatcher got the call about little Timmy, and the dispatcher like had to make these phone calls. The dispatcher had to send him over. And so like, I want to, I would not be on the field. And so like, kudos to the officers and the firefighters and the EMS and EMTs, like the people that do that. I could not, but we're just like all very like, we're part of a puzzle, and we like get the bigger picture together with each other. But I just want like people to know about like dispatching. I want dispatchers to kind of get more, not recognition, but I think I don't know. I want people to like be interested in dispatching, ask questions, apply, because we're so like low staffed across all first responder fields. And so that's just kind of my goal. Like I want to go to like schools and job fairs, career fairs, like just advocate and talk about dispatching and first responding. So that's my goal, having to do like with the community. But yeah.
Love that. Yeah. And what you touched on, I relate to. I was a we had an active shooter incident June 22nd, 2001. And a guy walking down the street at random, he grabbed a M1 Garand rifle and just started, murdering people. And there were a lot of officers involved in that call. And it was really kind of the first time so that was the first time I had been involved in like critical incident debriefing stuff, right? Like, having and our agency, it actually was one of the cities that had coined the phrase going postal. We had unfortunately, the first post office massacre. And that was way before I became a law enforcement officer. But this was an open air active shooter. And there wasn't a lot of infrastructure in place for helping people kind of deal with the trauma and, of that situation. And that was the first time I think that they had started kind of building a structure around that. And the cool thing was they brought everybody in, including the dispatchers. And I was able to connect with their emotion behind really how helpless they felt, right? Because they could hear us going through everything. And then I think there was a lot of times to where, they probably weren't saying anything. They were just waiting to hear the next voice on the radio to know that everything was okay, or that, somebody wasn't hurt or what. And they were also receiving multiple 911 calls where people were calling in that other people were shot, trying to get, medical to them. Have you had like something that chaotic or crazy to where, and the follow-on question to that is, because you touched on it, does your department have something in place to, when you have a critical incident, do they have something in place? I'm sure they do for the law enforcement officers, but do they include the dispatchers in that process to kind of to process traumatic stuff like that? Or can you share a little bit of what that process is?
Yeah, well, for us, I know that we have, I don't remember what it's called, but we have kind of like a little, not a buddy system, but kind of like a support group. And so it's optional. Like if you want to, yeah. And so if we want to join that, then we're able to, like that's accessible to us. And then if we don't want to, then they do have therapy. So they give us they include 5 free sessions to see like if something that you want to pursue, which is really generous. I think like a lot of people could, they could test the waters if that's for them, if that's not for them. And then if they want to pursue that, then they can. And then that's the only 2 that I do know about is that like the peer support group, which is where like, first responders, you help each other out, talk about that stuff, and then just kind of work through it. Or you could do your own private, session.
That's awesome.
Therapist.
And that's available to the dispatchers. Do you guys have, we used to have, I know and again, I'm not quite sure the size of the agency you're at, but our agency had like kind of a wind down room, like, a place where it was nothing but I think maybe like a recliner and just, maybe so. Do you guys have kind of a decompress room?
Yeah.
Where you can
we have the Zen room.
Yeah,
it's called the Zen room.
I was just going to say, have you ever used the Zen room? Have you ever had that call that just put you on edge so much that you went and had to make use of the Zen room?
Not gonna lie, I go to the Zen room when I just like want a massage, or just when I'm like tired. But like, it's not
is there a massage chair? Is there a massage chair in your Zen? Yeah, that. Okay, that's next level. It's level.
It's so nice. Yeah, so it's a massage chair, and then they have tea, coffee, hot chocolate, and then like they have the nice little lighting, and it's nice. So I'm like, I'm tired or I'm bothered, but I've never gone in there for like a hard call, luckily. But if I do, I'll definitely go in there. But yeah,
no, that's good. I'm glad that's available, and even in the capacity you're using it in. I think that's super important. I mean, for me, there were certain, even as a law enforcement officer, there were places that, even businesses that were just more welcoming. I knew that maybe the business owners or the people that worked there that were friendly. And I would go to a hard call and if I had time, if it wasn't super busy and I wasn't running call to call, then I would just kind of go hang out at those businesses. I had one friend of mine that was a retired firefighter that owned kind of a little like protein shake place. And I would go in there, and I was so comfortable in there. He had a couch in the back, and I'd take off my vest and, just sit down on the couch. So, it's super important to be able to do that. And a lot of times I think like law enforcement officers, like fire, in the fire service, they typically get a chance to kind of go back to the station, and the station's almost like home. But in law enforcement, there really wasn't a place like, I tried to stay in my district. It's not like I could go back to the station after every call. And so, man, I'll tell you what, if you're out there and you're a business owner and you want to open your doors to police officers like that, it was absolutely a lifesaver for me, because there were just times that I could go in there and it felt like a safe place, And so anyway, I'm glad.
That's so smart.
It was great. Yeah. And I definitely spent money there too, and it was healthier than McDonald's. McDonald's was giving me food for free. But I was be something healthier, but well, very cool. Well, what is, like I said, kind of as you were saying, you're looking at maybe just bringing awareness to the profession. Do you have kind of a path for that, or do you have an idea of what that looks like, or are you working on anything? Do you have anything kind of that you're building in that respect, or are you working with your city to maybe do some of those things, or can share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've kind of talked to, this was like a while ago. I talked to my HR lady, and I asked her like, hey, do you guys have some sort of like outreach program or any like way to connect with the school so that we could talk about this and everything like that? And she had told me no, but that's interesting. I think we should do that. But she no longer works with us. So, and then especially with like what just happened with like me going under investigation and all that stuff, like I kind of want to like lay low for now before asking like, hey, let's do an outreach. You know what I mean? So, but that's why I like doing like the podcast. So like I'll accept doing podcasts and stuff. When it comes to like, there's this one person that asked me to be on their podcast, but they have a questionnaire. And so I'm like, oh, like I just don't have time to like, be answering all of it, but because I still have to like manage like my own social media, and then I have to do my own work. And then I work 12-hour shifts. So I like sleep during the day, and then I don't know, it's just like stuff like that. And then like the podcasts that I already have in place are like things that I have to like do. So I'm like, oh, I don't have time. Maybe it's just laziness, but like, I don't know. I'm on a computer front like all day. So I'm like, I don't want to like do more homework, but yeah. So, but I always will be open to like doing podcasts and things like that, because I feel like, the people that watch like your podcast or podcasts similar to, it brings more like people either like that are curious or people that are in the job or things like that. But I do want to reach out to schools, but I don't know if I should do that without my agency. So I'm just kind of waiting on it. But
yeah, you might. Yeah, we can. I'll talk to you a little bit offline about maybe some options. Once we get down here, I've been kind of doing things like what you're describing. So, but I think it is just like you said. I value bringing awareness to law enforcement, public safety in general, right? And I think it's so important. I think over the last 4 or 5 years, we've lost a lot of really good officers, firefighters that have retired early just because of what happened to the perception of who we are and what we do, right? And that's, I know for me, I left just before that happened, but full disclosure, I got pulled over. and the trooper that pulled me over was like, I handed him, my driver's license and I have my retired ID. So, and he was like, oh, when did you retire? And I told him I retired in 2017. And he was like, man, you got out just in time. And I was like, that's unfortunate, right? Like that position that a lot of people one of the worst things I think in anything you do is not feeling appreciated. And you said that we don't do it for the appreciation. And you're right, we don't. But it sure makes it easier when you feel a little appreciated, right? To do the hard things.
Sure. For sure. Definitely.
To want to go in that day, knowing the things that are facing, that are potentially that you're going to have to deal with. If you're already having a bad day as a human being, right? Like even what you were dealing with on the side of the perception of kind of what was going on from your administration and things like that. And I think what you're doing is a very positive thing. And, and then you probably did too. You're like, man. And I think that's what attracted me to your story, was that you really kind of got a taste of what it's like to be a cop. I mean, we literally think we're doing the right thing 90% of the time. Not that we don't make mistakes, but we literally think we're doing the right thing. And then you get called in and you're like, and you're being disciplined, or they're questioning what you did, why you did it, why you made that decision. And you're like, I followed every procedure in the book. Like I did what I've been taught to do. And why am I getting in trouble? Right? Like, why am I being disciplined? And then you tie your paycheck to that too, right? Like you're like, well, if I get fired, what do I do? And there's something to be said within the public safety circle also. If you get fired, there's not every agency's just looking to pick you up and give you another job in what you were doing, right? Because now you're not necessarily, I mean, once you get fired, I mean, there's that culture of kind of being blacklisted, right? Depending on the circumstances and all that stuff. Yeah. And so that's, when I saw your raw emotion, and I would encourage everybody, go over to Gabby's Instagram and give her a follow, because it really is a great page. I'm bummed that you haven't had more content like you had before, because I thought that was the raw stuff, right? But there's still value, and I just I think maybe the second or third post I ever saw of yours was you responding emotionally to getting disciplined, and that's where I was like, man, I relate to that so much. I relate to thinking you're doing the right thing, and then being called on the carpet and told you're under investigation, or they're looking into what happened. It's just like, you feel like a criminal, or at least I did. I was like, the times that's happened to me, I was like, did I do something illegal? Like, I feel like I did everything. And that's the piece that people don't understand. That's the piece that I think the normal person doesn't necessarily process it in terms of, how much we really put ourselves out there emotionally to serve. Yeah. And so all that to say, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate everybody in that capacity. Obviously, it holds a special place in my heart. I have a bias, towards anybody in the public safety area, but to recognize, that moment in your life, I definitely connected. And I think there were a lot of people, and I don't know if you saw a spike in your following at that point, but I can imagine that you probably did. But you and I chatted a little bit before we started recording, and you said you'd share a little bit of it, but I'd love for you to just kind of share what happened with that, what you can talk about. And I know it's been wrapped up and you're all good. Yeah. But if you can share just a little bit about how that happened, I'd love just to give some insight into the background a little bit.
Yeah. So I have been doing these videos for about 2 years now. And like my officers follow me, all of my supervisors or admin that follows me, not everybody, because they don't have TikTok and all that. But yeah, so everybody was following me, and I was just making these every couple shifts, but I never posted anybody that didn't want to be on my page. Everybody that's on my page, they've consented to. And that's important for later. But anyway, so I just did that. And there's one certain coworker who's very adamant about policy, and he would watch my page. And if there was anything, and obviously my supervisors as well, if there was anything questionable, they would tell me take it down or edit it and things like that, which only has happened once or twice. So I have suspicions, and a lot of my coworkers have suspicions, just because there's a specific person who followed all my social media. And there's this one video that I made about the mean captain, which is, I was just venting about how the mean captain told us that we're the minimum is one person per shift. If everybody calls out, by chance, everybody calls out and there's one person to volunteer, there used to be like, oh, more people could volunteer to like fill in the spots. But no, the mean captain said, no, like if there's one person that volunteers, then that's the only person that can work then. And I'm like, what? So I was like really upset at that because I'm like, there's just no way. Like, I don't know. But so I was upset and I ranted about that. And there's out-of-state coworkers that agreed with me. Then I noticed that somebody like just unfollowed me and they were mad about something they took personal that they shouldn't have taken personal, honestly, but whatever. So anyways, all of a sudden I get called into the mean captain. He comes in and I do love him. Like, he's awesome. Like, I go and talk to him and we're good. I just call him the mean captain because he's like the more stricter captain. Right, and so anyways, yeah. So he comes into dispatch at the start of my shift at 7 p.m. But he's usually there like 6 a.m. So I'm like, oh, like I'm the very like uppity, like, you know, charismatic one. So he comes in and I'm like, good morning. You know, like, or I said, like, what are you doing here? Like, hello. And then he was like, he just like kind of like when he walked in, he was just like kind of quiet, but he's usually like very stern and stuff. He was just like quiet. And then he like walks up to me and my supervisor. He's like, you and you in the office. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, he looks like sarcastic and funny. So I was like, okay. So I'm like thinking this is a joke. And then my supervisor is like, because I never get in trouble. I've never gotten in trouble or anything like that. So he's like, Gabby, what did you do now? And I was like, I don't know. We're about to find out. Like, I'm just thinking this is all a joke. And so I'm like, okay. I go in and he closes the door and he's like, so I heard word about an Instagram page. And I said, okay. And then he was like, so you're on paid admin leave. You're under investigation. I'm going to need your government badge. And I was like, I'm just like, oh my God. I was like shook. And my like supervisor was like, huh? And I was just like, oh my gosh. I was like mortified. I was embarrassed. I was confused. But when he said like, you're under investigation, I was thinking in my head, like, oh, like everything I say will be used against me. So I'm not going to say anything. And I got so scared. I was so nervous. I was so frantic that I got out and like, I was only in there for like less than 10 seconds. I get out and I was so frantic that I give him my state ID, my driver's license. I was nervous. I was like, so he was like, no, not this, like your badge, like your dispatch badge. And I was like, oh, okay. But I gave him like the whole thing. I was so embarrassed. I was so confused. It was during shift change. So everybody like from the evening shift and the night shift were all watching. And I was like, oh. So he's like, okay, you want to gather your things? And then I put all my stuff away. And then he's like, I have to escort you out. And I was like, oh, I was like, what is going on? And so anyways, I just asked him, I didn't know what to say, what to do. So I just asked him, I was like, how long is this going to be for? And he's like, I don't know, like we're investigating it. And then he was like, I said, well, is anybody going to want to call me and ask me questions? And he said, we'll keep in touch. And I was like, okay. And then he's like, I'm sorry, this is coming from like the top. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, I did everything right. Like I asked, everybody watches, like, I don't understand. And so he's like, I'm really sorry. Like have a safe drive home. So I was like, okay, like it's not him. He's just doing his job. But he had gotten an email himself. And then before after I left is when he reviewed my videos. But before that, he spoke to my supervisor and he made the comment of mean captain. He's like, so I'm perceived as the mean captain. And he just starts laughing. And he was like, that was really funny. He was like, I just have to do it because we got a formal complaint. And so in my head, I'm like, none of my followers know where I live. None of them know what my agency is, because even though this is a city, there's a lot of little agencies within the city. So I was like, there's no way that, So I was like, there's no way that anybody would have known my captain's specific email. And there's no, like, I speculate that somebody had sent him the mean captain because only the insiders know who the mean captain is. And so it was just like, I don't know, like they're the chief. And I would think like if they really wanted to come after me, which the chief obviously knows, but like, to me, it was like, oh, they sent it to the captain. He knows about the mean captain thing. And that was only posted on TikTok, not on Instagram. And so it's like a lot that kind of like makes sense that it was a specific person. And so anyways, they went through it. And then he called me. It was like the investigation was 3 days, but I had 2 days off of those 3 days. So it was only really 1 day that I was gone. He calls me. He's like, hey, you could come back to work. He was like, you did a very good job at hiding everything. You did really good. Like we didn't find anything. He was like, we just had to, like, they just had to do go through the protocols. And he was like,
Right.
but he's like, you can still make your videos. He's like, but you just can't record them at the dispatch center. He's like, if you want to like do the fake calls or reenact it, like that's totally fine, but you just cannot like, record there. And I have questions as to why, if I didn't violate anything, I didn't break policy, I hit everything, I did everything correct. But I was more worried about keeping my job rather than like keeping up with the social media. And so that's why I didn't ask, like, why can't I? But yeah, so that's basically what happened. So I didn't break anything or anything like that. It wasn't any specific video, but it was just like that formal complaint.
Has there been any more discussion with your department? Because in my mind, I'm thinking this is such a cool recruiting tool, like you said, right? Like I think your vision is spot on. You're like, you can bring attention to really how fun this job it can be. Not that it's not hard, right?
Yeah,
but it is same way. A lot of fun. I mean, being a cop was a lot of fun, and that's why you've had shows like, Cops and these law enforcement shows where people ride along, and you don't get to see that side. That's a very, behind the scenes role that in my mind is very underappreciated. And to get really competent people in those roles is so important to the overall service that a city, a county, a state, any community can provide, because a good dispatcher makes your law enforcement officers more effective and more competent. You really are the brains behind what we do, in the sense that, I come from old school, right? Where it was, literally my radio was my lifeline. I know now with computers and, there's a lot that officers can do on their own without going through a dispatcher. But there's things that can happen while I am literally handling a critical incident, right? And then you're checking things on the back end without me necessarily having to tell you if you're good, right?
Yeah.
Some actors, God bless them, right? For at least giving the career a chance or a shot. But what I mean is having a good dispatcher that is taking initiative to go, you know what? I'm going to look into that person. They haven't, sure may have asked me, right? But when I had a good dispatcher, like I told you, I had those dispatchers that would, when I heard their voice on the radio, I was like, okay, today's the day. And it was because I had those dispatchers that would automatically run that warrant check without me asking, right? They could automatically run that tag, or, get some details of a suspect description when I was in the middle of, trying to hunt them down and I didn't have a chance to talk to an eyewitness. Like, that stuff is absolutely crucial to the safety of a community. And so for you to be able to attract competent people to that profession through what you do by shedding a positive light on it, I'm like, why would an agency not encourage that? Right? Like that to me, if I was your boss, I'd be like, hey, Gabby, you just keep doing what you're doing, and we're going to figure out how to capitalize on it and get some great people in here like you. Right. And has there been any discussion like that? Do you think they're going to open it up a little bit? Are they going to see the value? Maybe they'll listen to this podcast and they'll go, you know what? We were looking at this the wrong way, So yeah, has there been any discussions of loosening the rein, so to speak?
There hasn't been discussion yet, because I don't feel like, personally, just like the vibe that I get, I don't feel like my agency is like against it, But I think because there's a specific person that is, they don't, I don't know. It's because they gave me they were like, you could keep your page, you could keep your videos, you could keep making them, but you just can't do it here. I want to present the idea later in the future, like, hey, can I bring these back up? And if I can't, can I just know why? Because I don't, if they didn't find anything, if I didn't bring policy or anything like that, it's not like messing with the work or anything. I do want to, but I don't feel like my captain, the mean captain, he actually brought me in yesterday in the morning, before I ended my shift. He was like, come in. And I was like, okay. And he was like, how are you doing? I was like, I'm good. Am I in trouble again? Did I post something? Are you mad about me crying on the video? But now he was just like, no, I just want to check on you. Like, I just want to make sure you're doing good and everything. And then, so I kind of have like a little plan of like how I'm going to like ask. So we'll see what happens. But no, they haven't really talked about like if that'll be open for the future. So, but I do plan on bringing that up.
Okay, good. I think you should. I think it's something worth pursuing because I just feel like it's a positive thing. And I think, you're seeing more police agencies, fire, all of, in the public safety umbrella. You even see it in the military side, right? Like people using social media, recruiters. There's a Marine recruiter that I watch that does great stuff for personal development and mindset. And, I think that's just such, well, it's silly, right? I'm 50 years old. I think of back in my day, it was if you wanted to build a business, you had to have a commercial on TV, right? And this is the new generation of TV. It has been for the better part of a decade, right? And it's crazy that people are resisting using it to attract competent people. And I think just now you're seeing the White House inviting podcasters into the press room, and I say that because I think it's a legitimate way to get a message out to the people, and you've done an amazing job with connecting with obviously people like me, right? Because when I saw it, I was like, you got me. I'm in. I'm watching all of them, scrolling through your page, going, man, this is awesome. And so I know there's other people, I actually noticed that I have some dispatchers in my local community now that I know that follow me and I follow them. And, Instagram tells you, hey, and so they follow you also. And, you are doing kind of what you set out to do, right? To build that community and shed a little awareness on that community and that profession. And so I, for one, am grateful for it. And I think if anybody from Gabby's agency is listening, you need to open your mind a little bit about this and give Gabby a chance to do some positive things for your agency. But I will say real quick, if anybody's listening to this on the audio podcast, I want to say when Gabby says mean captain, she does air quotes. So he's not actually the mean captain. He is just, you know what? I was probably the mean sergeant, right? The mean officer from time to time, because I was definitely that like straightforward, dude that when I dealt with stuff. So everybody's got somebody like that, but it sounds like he has a huge heart too, right? And so,
he's really awesome.
That's cool. And so yeah, mean captain, if you're listening, find a way to give Gabby a platform. She can do some positive things for your agency. There, I said it. You didn't have to say it. Well, talk to us. I know you said kind of a little bit that you've got some ideas that you've got. Are there any specifics that you can share of moving forward? I know you said you'd had some preliminary conversations, but if you were to just kind of tell the audience, what's next for Gabby? What do you got coming? What are you going to do with your content? I'm curious, are you, obviously I want this stuff back in. I want to see the dispatch videos again. Cause you had me hooked. I was in one of my, I'd be scrolling through there. So what's the future? What can people kind of expect with your content moving forward?
So with 911 and Gabby, what I'm thinking of doing, I'm definitely gonna pursue YouTube. I don't know. People tell me do the green screen idea, reenact the calls. It's different. Actually going through it and my facial expressions and my little commentary, it's so different than when it's staged. So I just don't feel like I can do it, but I might try. But I just don't feel like people know me enough. So I don't want to pursue it just yet, but I'm thinking about, I want to visit an agency. So just kind of do a giveaway and have a care package for the dispatchers and then just go and visit them, do a meet and greet, say thank you, things like that. I'm willing to fly to whoever wins, but I want to do something like that. But I just don't feel like I'm big enough yet to do that. Once more people know me, then I would do that. But that's kind of what's in the works.
I feel like once you break 100,000 followers on Instagram, I don't know where you're at on TikTok because I'm that guy too. Like I don't do the TikTok thing, but I'm on every other platform, and I know from an industry perspective, I work with some high level coaches for my YouTube channel, and that's kind of the cutoff is like 100,000, and like when you're starting out, that doesn't matter for somebody like me, but if you're going to talk to somebody on a podcast or a YouTube interview or something like that, you do kind of look at you're like, okay, 100,000 followers, that's, you've built an audience, you understand the virality of it, right? Like
yeah.
I mean, it's building a business. Like you have figured out marketing. You definitely have a grasp in that. So maybe you have a future in marketing, but you definitely have a future for sure. I love the idea. I was kind of thinking the green screen thing too, like, but like you said, it takes a little bit of acting versus just being yourself, right? And your authenticity is what makes you appealing, like that's what I loved was your authenticity comes through, and just that you're really just having fun at work, right? You're enjoying what you're doing. And I will say I have a health and wellness background. I do health and wellness coaching, and the food you eat's a little cringy for me. I gotta admit, like if I was gonna
now the love that means get me.
I know. No, I was like, I got to resist the urge to reach out. That might have been the first time I would have ever reached out to you. Go like, hey girl, I can help you with this little Debbie habit you got, right? Like I had Monster Energy. I had Monster Energy and Big Mac habits back in the day. So I definitely feel you on that for sure. But yeah, it's, it's that stuff when I look at that and I'm like, and that is one of the things too, right? That I, when I look at people in public safety and the military, things like that, oh my gosh, we have the most unhealthy habits. Like we just, the food we eat. And I mean, thank goodness I was on the SWAT team because physical fitness was a part of keeping that role. Right. But I still ate
dispatchers are just sitting there eating.
I know. It's like, it's kind of the worst combination of high stress environment and sedentary lifestyle, right? Like,
eating, like stress eating. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I think, man, we may be touching on something that other agencies need to look at, like health and wellness programs, things like that for their
you're on something.
But yeah, I mean, I think again, just an example of, that back behind, the behind the scenes look. And, I love it. So, I'll say it one more time. We gotta give you that platform back. I think. I don't think you should have to reinvent what you do because what you do was successful, but I like the idea. So you're thinking just like tell true crime stories and stuff on YouTube. That's kind of the direction.
Just kind of do that, answer questions, and I want to do like kind of like a debrief of my calls that I got that week. But I don't know, just kind of like so I just started like noting down like the calls that I got during the week and just talk about it. But I think that's boring. Like I think it's like more fun to like see it actually happening. But we'll see. I'm just like really gonna like explore that page, just kind of see what works, what doesn't, what people like, what people gravitate towards. And then just like, I want it to be informative, but also entertaining with the whole like true crime videos or like little videos of like officers around the world and what they've gone through and like injustices or like happy stories, like things like that. So I just kind of want to like talk about that.
Well, maybe you can have me as a guest sometime. I got some crazy stories. I don't know. Most of mine are out there on my podcast, but what you're talking about, like that story, that's kind of the initially how I started. I would tell a story, share something that happened in my long career, military, combat missions, SWAT team, law enforcement. I got a great episode that you'd probably enjoy. And it is about when a guy stole my patrol car and went to Taco Bell. And we literally, I think the episode's called something like a patrol car and Taco Bell and a lesson in structure or something like that. But literally this dude duped me and stole my patrol car.
Oh, and
then,
gosh.
I mean, what are you
Did
gonna
you get in trouble
do?
for that?
You steal a patrol. Oh yeah, he got in trouble. He actually.
No, did you get in trouble?
Did I get in trouble? Yeah. There was a write up involved in that. Yes, ma'am. There was. I took my lumps for sure. It could have been way worse. Luckily, like a week later, like literally like 7 days later, another officer had his patrol car stolen, and he shot at the car in the incident. So the guy was,
Oh my
God. I don't know. Well, we have a shotgun and a rifle inside of the cab of our vehicle. And so I don't know if the guy, I don't remember the story if he had accessed that, but he actually shot at the patrol car as the guy was stealing it, which ultimately kept the guy from stealing the car. I will say
that's good.
But anyway,
was there damage to the?
I know, right? And then the great thing, this is the best thing about that story, is that my story was quickly forgotten because that was a much better story to tell. You know how it is. Like you're that guy for a while, right? I was only that guy for 7 days.
Yeah.
And we were good.
Oh wow, that's happened to me before. I'm like waiting for the next bad. I mean, I don't want bad to happen, but I want mine to be forgotten. So
right. Isn't that funny? Like the culture of and it's in good nature, right? Like you make a mistake, and you're the butt of the joke for however long until that next person makes a mistake. One of our officers keyed up, and he was singing. While he was keyed up on the radio. And if you have a story like this, I want you to share it. But he was keyed up on the radio singing Cher. Do you believe it? Do you believe in love after love? That song or whatever. And this is like at the time, like a 20-year vet, right? Like, and he's keyed up singing Cher on the radio at the top of his lungs. And yeah, so he was that guy for a long time. My face already hurts from telling that story.
But yeah, that's happened to me too before. I've been the singer on the radio.
Have you ever so I mean, you can share with it if you're not, but have you ever been like mad at an officer? Because this happened to me. Like mad at an officer, and then you're keyed up and you give him some information, then you forget you're keyed up and you say something nasty about the officer.
Never. No, that's never happened. There's one specific officer. I like him in person, but on the radio, I cannot stand him. I do not like him. But no, I've never like accidentally said anything like that, or hot mic like that before.
I have I don't know if I've shared a little bit of my story. Mine had to do, it was on a DOA and I had a hot mic. Well, I was talking and then I saw it was actually a decapitation. Oh. And I was looking at the body and I was like, where's the head? I'm thinking in my mind, like, where's the head?
Yeah.
And I'm keyed up on the radio calling, for basically to let them know that it's a fatality. Mm-hmm. And as I turn my head to talk on the mic, I see the head. And so I'm keyed up and I'm calling it out. And I go, oh yeah, there it is, or something like that. And that was on the radio, and everybody that showed up on the scene were like, bro, what was that? Oh yeah, there it is on the radio. And I was like, dude, I saw the head in that moment, like that was separated from the body. And
that is so ugly. Oh,
and so yeah, I know that's one of the funny things that people. I mean, obviously, that's a very tragic circumstance, and that's
but
that's the nature, I guess, what we do, and I mean, you kind of compartmentalize it, and you go on with your life, right? Like, I mean, it's a part. It's horrible. But it's a part of the job, and it's what we do.
Yeah, like if you hold on to it, it's just going to do you damage. So you just got to learn to let it go.
That's it. And the way that we usually deal with it is through humor. Like for sure,
100%.
I mean, if you can't joke about it, you're going to cry about it. And I don't know that crying about it is always the healthiest thing to do, just because it takes a while to sort of unpack that stuff. But how long have you been? Total time? How long have you been dispatching on the police side?
Police side 2 years, and then my other job was just 1 year, so I'm still kind of fresh, I feel.
Yeah, you're still pretty new, but that's kind of depending on how busy your agency is, though. you can get a lot of experience in 2 years.
Oh,
Kind
for
of depends,
sure.
like I said, like I know at our agency, 2 years is kind of a seasoned veteran in dispatch.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's cool.
in fact, I think if we could keep them past 2 years, a lot of times just from the stress of it, right? Do you see, is there a pretty high turnover for you guys, or do you feel like you do a pretty good job of holding on to people for a while?
We're not like, how do I explain? I think there was a period where we were hiring and we were like, okay, once this person is done with the training, then we're going to hire this person and this person. So we had like, before we finally, well, we're not fully staffed, but the last like round of trainees that we got were good. But the one before that, it was like we would hire somebody and then they'd quit or they wouldn't show up. And then we'd hire somebody else. They wouldn't show up or they weren't good. And like things like that. So before this like group, it was bad. But now we're pretty solid.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's good. That's good. Yeah. And I think if, again, awareness to kind of how fun that career field is and, things like that.
Oh, for sure.
I think that's great. Do you feel like, do you view it as a long-term career? And you don't have to necessarily answer that honestly, but what do you view it as something that you're going to do for a while, or, do you have aspirations to, I know obviously kind of with what you got going on, we've talked about those dreams and kind of the vision you have for that. But do you, I guess what I think about is I do know some people who made a long-term career of it, right? And have retired or are on the path to retirement from that career field. How do you view that for yourself? Do you want to stick around? Is this something you want to do for a while, or are you wanting to maybe look at different things in the future, or kind of what's your feeling on it?
So I don't think I'll be a dispatcher forever, but I do think that it just like whether staying in law enforcement like forever type of thing, it would depend on like where they put me, because I would want to be in like kind of like in charge of like the outreach program or like more communal things. So I would definitely like stay if I was in that realm. But if I end up finding that way on my own without my agency, then I would kind of go that way, but still like more advocating for like the first responder world or the people that need help or like nonprofits. But I think like if I'm able to like kind of pave my way in that direction, whether it's with my agency or on my own terms, then that's where I'm kind of like aiming to go towards.
I like that. I did an interview with a guy where actually one of my old partners, it's an organization called On Call Project. And On Call Project is the first nonprofit that helps transitioning first responders. So people that are looking to transition into other career fields from the first responder umbrella, right? So anything under that umbrella, law enforcement, fire services, dispatchers, things of that nature. Yeah. So anyway, you might give them a follow, check them out. The founder and CEO is a great friend of mine. His name is Jeff Moorfield. I actually have an interview with him on here, and we had great video. As a reference, we had great video and horrible audio on his podcast. But it's always the technical stuff, right? Like, but anyway, an organization that you can look into. It kind of fits with what you just said, right? Like, so, but yeah, it's I think the first. Well, I know that.
What'd you say? On Call?
On Call Project. Yeah.
Project.
Yeah. And they do kind of a full service. They're not a placement agency, but what they are is just an organization that provides resources for people who want to transition out. And that was a big thing for me was, I wanted, even when I wanted to transition out, I'm like, okay, enough's enough. Like, I think I want to retire. I wasn't quite sure. I was like, well, what do I do? Right? Like, what else is there? Like, and I wouldn't have even known how to make a resume, to say, that's why I became an entrepreneur. It was one of the things I was like, I'm not going to go into the private sector. I don't even have like an up-to-date resume. I don't have, probably not very good at talking to people, right? Like I'm going to have to retire the knife hand because if you make me a manager or something, former military, SWAT, law enforcement, like I don't know that
You'll be the mean boss.
do very right. I'll be the mean boss, right? Yeah. And I did a little corporate consulting, but that was after I'd been, in the game for a little bit as an entrepreneur. But so anyway, great service. And maybe there's something that you can fit into with that.
Hopefully I'll reach out. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. A great friend of mine, former SWAT team partner. We actually we served in the military together too. And anyway, really cool organization he just launched like last year. So, yeah. So, well, and is there anything else, another message you've got for everybody? We've touched on kind of what you're doing. I feel like I'm super excited about what's next and what you've got going, especially I love the idea on the YouTube channel. And if you need any help with that, I've definitely learned a lot really fast. You can always reach out to me.
Thank you.
I have learned an insane amount just in the short time that I've been in this game. We obviously don't have the vanity metrics where, we're growing, but we're not a huge channel or podcast. But anyway, I'd love for you, any final words that you have for the audience, and, we'll kind of wrap it up.
No, I would just say, and this is just outside of like dispatching police or anything, but just like be kind, because you never know what anybody's going through, as like cliche as that is, but it's just people that you're dealing with or anything, like just the way that they're responding. It's just, you never know what they're going through. Everybody's going through something right now, and we're not going to always like share that, and we're going to put our best face forward, but just be kind to everybody. And yeah, it makes a difference.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Gabby, for your time today. It's been a fun conversation. A great conversation. And so I'm going to wrap it up there and just tell everybody, remember, take a knee, drink water, reshoot your azimuth, and Charlie Mike, and we will see you on the next episode.